we're going to call the meeting to order. Do we have a quorum of the Norwich Record Advisory Board?
Yes, we do. Every single person that is appointed thus far is here.
Okay, and I see that there's a number of other people also on this meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is it possible, I don't know how this exactly works, because we've only had maybe 1 or 2 meetings in all the years that I've been on this, that we've had the public attend the meeting to speak. And you have public comment as number 3. So is it either possible to make a motion to move that until after our discussion or to add another public comment? I would prefer actually if we can move it after, make it number, like make number 4, number 3 and number 3, number 4, if that makes sense to you.
I'm not sure if we can move things around. I mean, I think because I can't hear you, Cheryl. Because it's a special meeting, but it's on the agenda, I don't see the issue with moving the 2. I don't have a problem with it as long as everyone else is okay with it. So I'll make the motion that we switch public comment after, is it the discussion on the movement?
Correct.
So
That's really the only item on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so I will move the public comment to after our discussion of the changes to the rec department.
And can I second it?
Again,
Seconding it. So the board members, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed?
we're good.
Abstentions? So moved. Okay, got it. All right, so we're down to the discussion on the movement of the recreation maintainers under the supervision of Public Works. So many of you have seen some correspondence I've already sent about this. So my first question probably is, we met in March 16th. And at that time, as in every meeting before this, we always talk about the facilities, the rec facilities. So was this at March 16th, was this even on this idea of this movement of the main, the park and recs moving to Public Works? Was this even on the horizon? That's my first question.
Who's the question for?
Tara, I guess, or the city, I would think, because they're the initiators of this plan.
So I'm not an initiator of the plan. This was a city manager decision. So I really can't speak to when that came to fruition. I was not aware of it last time we met in March.
Okay, good to hear. So then, all right, then my next question is, as being a part of the rec advisory board, and we look at the city charter and I look at our bylaws that we came up with in 2017, part of our duties and responsibilities is to view recreational facilities and programs in the city, and that's in our bylaws, one of the things in our bylaws. And then actually it's very similar to the charter, which says to confer and advise the chief executive officer of the city, who's the city manager, in respects to development and recreational facilities. So that didn't come to pass before this whole thing had been proposed. So my question is this a violation of the charter or our bylaws? Because we weren't advised or able to review this beforehand?
So I actually reached out to the Corporation Council to ask those questions. And I think because there's no facilities switch And based off of the charter, the city manager is pretty much has the final say so on specific moves within staffing and things of that sort. He technically doesn't have to come before the board because it's not a maintenance infrastructure project or change to any ballpark or thing of that sort. I think that's the biggest piece to it. I think the other part is, or the question I think that we pose, or the remedy to the situation is whether or not our role still is important, which I think whether you switch or you stay as is being an advisement to changes or developments or upgrades to facilities, recreational facilities and programs in the city. So I think regardless of who holds that job or overseeing it, our duty overall will still be the advisement to the chief executive officer of the city on specific programs, as well as upgrades or facilities needs. That I don't think changes regardless of who oversees it.
Okay, so then my next question would be, our first responsibility as listed in our bylaws states to review the recreational facilities and programs of the city. So who generally, the rec director talks about program, she also has been, any rec director we've had tells us about the facilities. So if this were to take place, how's that communication going to work? How are we going to be able to review facilities, the recreational facilities and their upkeep and whatever we usually do? Update on facilities.
I'll let Tara take this one.
I would say that, it would be either Pat himself would choose to come to this meeting as Director of Public Works, or he may have Ken attend this meeting, who will still be the supervisor over the maintainers, even if he's reporting to a different person in Public Works. So there's not going to be any change of information. The information will still be there and we can still get the information. We'll just have to determine the best way for that to move forward.
Okay. All right, so can I have the rationale for this movement, please? Why is the city doing it?
Well, again, this was the city manager's decision. So I think if you were looking to have the rationale, then we should have asked the city manager if he was able to attend this meeting.
But as the director of this department, or the head of this department, I'm not exactly sure what your title is, but like Leanne oversaw this department. I'm sure you must have had some input and had a discussion about this with him.
No, it wasn't input. It was, we're going to move the maintainers under Public Works.
That was your decision, or that was your recommendation. Let me put it that way. That was your recommendation?
No, I've already stated that I've not been involved in this decision-making process. The city manager makes the decisions on the organizational structure of the city.
And so where do you think he got this information from? Has he shared that with you?
No, I wouldn't ask the city manager where he gets his information from.
So I will say, and it was stated during his budget presentation, that I would say probably maybe 7 or more years ago, this was a topic of discussion, maybe around the time when he first started here or just before he started in the city, of moving the maintainers under Public Works. At that time, there were a lot of issues, as he explained, when it came to contractual things, and they were unable to come up with generally an overall agreement on how to make it work. And so it was one of the goals as they've looked for efficiencies across the city and other departments as well. And pretty much his rationale, and you can also email him after this, was that the timing, he felt the time was, this was a good time for making this opportunity of the consolidation into one department.
Okay, so as a person on the Norwich Rec Advisory Committee, I feel my job and duty is to support and maintain, support the rec department, which I think we've done in the past. And I don't think this is a good idea. I just don't see how severing the maintenance crew. I understand the city, certainly has budget constraints and issues, and you don't want to add FTEs if you don't have to. But I think that, as I am, that's my job on this committee, to support the rec department. I am very concerned about the fact that there's severing the head of the rec department from the maintainers who are integral in keeping up the fields in terms of processing, requests and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I lie, that, I think that something could be worked out, that it's not just, take the maintainers and put them under public works. And then there's this disconnect between public works and the rec department, now here's a question. So the maintainers who currently are maintaining the fields under rec, are they still going to, is that their primary job? Is that going to be what they do?
In his budget, he has them as rec maintainers, as a crew still. And his other rationale he explained during the budget hearings was, instead, of course, you talked about the FTEs. He explained that once there are still a lot of details, of course, that have to be worked out, through this process. But that once if they were collectively possibly in the same union, or there were agreements made, that over time, instead of trying to figure out how to add individuals that may not fit in the budget or may get cut from the budget year to year, it would allow, if they've got a game out at Dickerman, they've got a game on Depina, and they've got another field that needs to be maintained, he could possibly send additional laborers and maintainers from the department out to help get those fields ready for games or rain delay or weather situation. So I think that was his other rationale that he gave during the budget hearing as well.
Okay. I hear you say that, and I'm not sure there've been any complaints or that the maintenance crew hasn't been able to handle the different fields either simultaneously or at different events or whatever, but so be it. So I'm a little, or
if I could add something, I just want to agree. I just want to make sure I state I'm obviously new to the rec committee. I've been a PE teacher in Norwich for 22 years, and I know how important recreation is in the city. I agree with Julie completely. If you disconnect the maintenance department from Cheryl, who's doing an amazing job up there with all the programs, there's waiting lists. It's going to hurt the city. And just a little example of that is if you drive by Buckingham courts, that is a public works court, and it's just in disarray, and that needs to be fixed. So we would probably be in that situation with a lot of things. I think it would just kind of hurt the whole entire recreation department as far as keeping the fields and having those fields maintained.
thanks.
And the fields have never looked better. I talked to some of the baseball coaches. They're looking amazing up there. So they're doing a great job. I know Ken is on the phone at all times with the baseball coach. Day-to-day operations is key to all those sports. So I think that's really important to have the maintenance crew connected right there. So I just want to make sure I stated that.
Thanks. I agree. I think I'm not exactly sure how, or how the connection can be kept between the rec director and the maintainers of the rec fields. I think it's vital. And I think if it is severed, like, if I didn't even realize that Buckingham was under Public Works. So if that's going to be the case, and we see what's happening at Buckingham, that's probably start going to happening to all the other recreation fields. The recreation department in Norwich. Oh my goodness. I've been here since 1975 with Dick Fontaine. And, you know, after Lou left, it just has gone downhill. And fortunately, Cheryl has come on board and things have turned around tremendously. And I think that this is a big hit to the recreation department. And I certainly don't support it. And I hope the city council can find a way to keep things connected with the rec department and the fields that they've been maintaining. And I think this is a horrible idea. And I will talk to the city manager. I will make an appointment with him to find out what he was thinking when he made this. And so that's pretty much where I just believe that there can be a better way to address this issue.
I think the other thing, you know, I'm an individual, kind of what we're presented with is also coming up with other options or remedies. And the good part of us being an advisory, kind of you as going as chair and having a conversation with the city manager, I think it would be appropriate to have a list of suggestions or requests if the change does go through, of, you know, what are some of the things that we want to make sure, because our role is seeing, you know, that the fields are maintained does not change regardless of this switch. So we're still the stewards as a board to make sure that, you know, the upkeep of these facilities is, you know, at the forefront of the staff. You know, so one of the things I think I proposed in an email was, you know, we do it with other departments, weekly coordination meeting. You know, so there be a meeting between the public works director, Cheryl, as well as the maintenance supervisor, looking over where things are as far as a programmatic schedule, but also game schedules, things of that sort. You know, I think, you know, having a liaison from the public works department attend our rec advisory meetings, but maybe giving a monthly update as to what's going on with some of the upgrades that may take place at some of the parks through the capital budget, but also some of the work that they may see needs to be discussed or addressed. You know, I think having a list of things that, you know, we would expect, regardless of whether it stays or goes, I think has to be the other big picture. The other big piece I know we're working on, you know, is this master park plan. Overall, I think that's going to be vital, regardless of who oversees, you know, from a supervisory standpoint, the group, because I think we need to know the direction of one, who's supposed to maintain what, but more importantly, what direction each and every one of our parks and facilities is going in, so that we have us as a rec advisory have a more solid conversation as to what are some of the things we need to drive the city to put dollars towards, or to take or address while they're maintaining during those seasons. So I think there's an approach that, you know, these are some of the things you want them to do regardless of us switching, or if it stays the same. You know, weekly coordination meetings between the individuals, them having someone that gives us sends the rec advisory committee a monthly update as to the way things are going for maintenance, liaison from their staff that attends our meetings, and kind of, I think that's a starting point. again, the budget still isn't passed. It's a preliminary proposal. So we still have time to figure this out. So you reaching out to meet with him, I think will kind of give some of those clarities to those suggestions, but also the direction of what the thought process was.
Well, I will do that. However, again, my concern is that when you start adding other layers in here and liaisons and other meetings, that's when I find things are not as efficient as if you have direct connections. So that would be my concern there, but I appreciate, you know, your suggestions and what you've said. And is this, I'll ask our city councilors, is this a done deal? Do we have a way to remedy this and kind of, as I feel, stay in the right direction?
Nothing's a done deal. We haven't passed a final budget. So the switch is tied to the budget. We only adopted a tentative budget on Monday night. So a final budget won't be passed until at least the first or second week of June. So there's no final done deal. We're still working on the budget. So there's a lot of other things that and factors for us to still look at. So as I said, and several others said on Monday, there's a lot of work still to do with the budget. So it's not a done deal. It was just part of the tentative proposal.
Okay.
We have somebody with their hand raised. Peter?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, sorry. To Alderman Wilson's point, I'm not sure about suggestions if we're not sure of the rationale. Like I agree with Jeff in terms of the fields are great. Cheryl's partnership with the public schools has really helped like I said, we're not sure of the rationale behind this move, and if it's not broke, why fix it? Is it a budgetary thing? Is it a way to cut staff? Because as Jeff mentioned, Buckingham School, a lot of the public schools are not under the control of Public Works or the rec department, and the facilities are not as well maintained as what the rec department staff maintains. And you know, certainly we as a rec board, we don't want to see those facilities drop in terms of quality. So I'm not sure what suggestions we would have other than we just want to keep it the same.
Well, I agree
Yeah,
with that.
I came on the record. I came on the rec advisory board to see the department grow, not to have things taken away from it at my first meeting. So I'd like to see us talk more about it, vote on it possibly as a committee. What do we think as a committee about this decision? I'm not sure if that's something we can do here.
We can. I know, like I said, I'm doing this meeting on my phone, so I have limited access. So I believe there's, do we have more discussion on this from the board members? I mean, I think we've kind of, I think there might be some other now ready for public comment. Can we move on to that?
Yeah, I mean, because technically, I don't think because we didn't have it as an action item for us to vote on favorability or any of those things, it wouldn't be, with this being a special meeting, we wouldn't necessarily vote on the direction other than.
Well, Darrell, we can, and we were having this discussion. I know we've made motions about other things like the tennis ad hoc committee. When we discussed that, it was on the agenda, and then we made a motion to create it. So
Was that a special meeting or was it a planned meeting?
it was a planned meeting, but why would that make a difference? I'm not familiar.
So based off of the rules of a special meeting, it's only what's put on the agenda is what you can act on, or so if an action item was to be, we wanted to make a recommendation, a favorable recommendation or against the recommendation of the move of the recreation, that would be an action that would have to be put on the agenda for the public to know. So
Well,
us,
I'm not really good with Robert's Rules of Orders,
Nope.
but I
Nope.
don't believe, oh, just because it's a special meeting, you can't do that?
correct. If this was a regular open meeting, that would be a different point, but whatever's on the agenda, we only
But
said
this
it's-
is a public meeting, Darrell. This is a
That's-
public meeting.
that's totally fine, but there's nothing on here saying that we're gonna take an action other than discussing the change. So I wouldn't want us to take a vote for it really not to mean anything because it was never posted in the actual special meeting. Trust me, I've been through this with other committees. If it's not on the agenda as something for us to take an action item up on, then technically you're not supposed to.
Okay, so if we don't vote on it, can we make a statement
I mean,
that
yeah,
as a board, we do not support this move?
you can put that in the discussion that as a board, individuals don't support the move, and yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So board members, we heard from the three of us who are not council members, so we don't support it. So I would have to look to the council members.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna abstain at this moment. And as we kind of comb through the budget to see all the moving parts to every part of the budget. I think, this is not the only one piece that I have to look at as far as being on the council, just from a recreational standpoint or a public works standpoint. So I think as we look at the overall budget, I'm not gonna say whether at this moment I'm for or against it as we're still gathering information on it. And I think I made that kind of clear on Monday night. There are certain things within the larger proposal of the budget that are a head scratcher to me. And we need some more clarity on. So I think that's why you saw the tentative adoption of the budget the way it is right now with a few changes, because there's a lot of other questions that we have over the overall scheme and rationale behind the budget.
And is Grant in the meeting?
Yep, he's right here.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm here.
I'd like to hear from you, Grant.
So I kind of am leaning towards what you and Jeff are saying, and Pete. I think that Cheryl's doing a great job, and I think that for us to merge into one, I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because if you could have 6 guys on a project and you knew it was going to get done in a timely fashion, and they were cruising through the day, making sure to take care of everything, then it might work. But my fear is that once these guys are put under one force, they're gonna forget about the field maintenance, and before we know it, it's gonna go south pretty fast. So I'm kind of in the boat of, I think that we should definitely have the conversation about keeping them split and trying to work with the city manager about what the best course of action is for the rec department. So I would definitely want to sit in on a meeting, Julie, if you would want to do that together, or I could meet
Sure.
with him by
Yeah.
myself, or
Yeah,
But
I think all of us could go as the advisory board, because that's part of our job, to advise him in terms of the use of recreational facilities, so yeah, I could set it up, or I can ask when we can, and or I could email everyone and see when people are available. So, but like Peter said, we're not getting a rationale behind this. I don't understand why, that's not available, to be honest with you.
right. And then the other thing I was going to say is I was curious. So Darrell, if we scheduled another special meeting maybe a week from now and wrote into the agenda that we did want to vote on it as far as how the rec advisory felt, and it was the agenda, is that something we could do as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just don't want us to be in a rabbit hole because I've seen it done with other ad hoc committees and whatnot. That, it's kind of like a null and void. You didn't have the proper notification of the public and just putting ourselves in a position that we don't want to be in. And the other part is we have time. So that's not like tonight we have to make a determination, because there's still time between now and when the final budget has to be passed. So I would want to do it right if we're going to do anything first.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. All right, so I have the drift of how the board feels. So at this point, I think I'd like to move to what we switched to now, number 4, to public comment. If there's people who are in the Zoom meeting and they would like to address the board.
I know several. Could you just as a suggestion, those that are going to speak in public comment, could they just state their full name and address so that we have it for the minutes?
This is being recorded, right? I don't have to write all this down.
No, it's being recorded.
Sheila
Ms.
has her
Hayes.
hand up.
Yep.
Sheila?
Okay, I was just waiting to be acknowledged. Sheila Hayes, 382 Laurel Hill Avenue. So my comments this evening are, number one, I too am curious as to why the city manager proposed this without having a discussion, at least with the director of the department. But having said that, I do understand he is the city manager. I am going to ask the Rec Advisory Committee to at least have an open view when you have the conversation with him, to really so we all have a better understanding as to why he is proposing this. To look at it as, because I have thought on this, that there could be some economies to scale, some efficiencies for the city, that is not a slap at or being directed at any individual as to how he or she may manage the facilities and or employees, the maintainers who are keeping the fields up. So I put that out because I will say back, and I can't remember how long ago it was, when the city took over the maintenance for the police department. And there was real concern raised, the same concerns that you're raising tonight, that the police department would be put on the back burner, there would be compromise, there was sensitivity of material, and that there was a lot of pushback. It did happen. It is working. As a matter of fact, we heard more compliments about being able to have flexibility with the staffing issue. I am one, it has not been with the rec department. I have been one that have been disappointed that we continue to keep the school maintainers separate from the city side. Those buildings belong to the residents of the city, and yet we have to pay to access or utilize after school and on the weekends, and we're already paying as taxpayers. I don't believe that's the case with the rec department, with the fields. At least I haven't heard of any group being charged who was not a for-profit group, so I don't have that issue there. But I will say, I've been in the city a long time. I've seen some of the changes, and some of the changes have been to benefit actually the larger community. So I just ask that when you have this meeting, at least dig down deep as to what the city manager's, why he's proposing this, and if there's an efficiency or an economy that allows you to understand that this might be a move in the right direction. You may choose to want to work or at least have the director of the department be more engaged in the process of it, because I really believe that's where the most gain in this is, that there needs to be a full out plan in this city on how those fields are going to be maintained, not just because a particular director or supervisor is there in the city holding that position. It has to be in the long term. And we have not committed ourselves as a city to have a long-term plan, regardless of who the individual is leading the effort. So I thank you.
Thank you. I didn't realize, oh, can I comment? Darrell, is it like, it's not a conversation?
Not to me, Julie, but you can have your discussion with your
For the
advisory.
overall group, absolutely.
Okay, so we will continue like with, if other people want to comment, public comment.
I believe there was one more.
Is this in reference to the personnel matter you just?
Just public comment, I think, in general, so.
General. Oh, okay.
Public comment.
Okay, yes. Yeah, my name's Tony Rucker, 83 Spring Street, Norwich, Connecticut. Yeah, so yeah, I it's an interesting discussion regarding maintaining our parks, proper supervision and maintenance. I'm familiar with Buckingham. I think that one of the biggest challenges is just on the maintenance side, when if it's a monthly thing, typically if things are skewed for longer than that, people, certainly should know, and how responsive, whatever the solution is, just how responsive the actions are going to be to actually rectify the problems. That's a big thing, just from a resident perspective. We understand that the parks are not going to be perfect, but certainly, it shouldn't take any longer than a month to make those corrections, whatever they are. But my general comments actually are in reference to parks. Actually, where I'm located now, the park is actually Jenkins Field is actually right down the street from my house, and one of the issues, concerns is I'm encouraged about the master plan that's soon to be developed, that would accommodate all of the different visions that community shares, and making sure that's a part of a park plan. Each community, of course, may have particular things that are more of a priority than others, but I think that Jenkins Field, currently under construction, there is a basketball court that's it's basically left field. I think that if the master plan actually had materialized already, that particular basketball court would not be placed in the middle of left field, which essentially renders the baseball field not viable. So these are the real purpose of a master plan, to ensure that before construction of these types of things take place, that the community members and, particularly the people who are in proximity to that park. I don't know if you can see, but right over my shoulder is the basketball courts. The tennis courts, that's the house there. And I used to look at my window and look down the street at people playing tennis, and I go down and play tennis. I was a pretty good tennis player, actually. But the important thing here is, like, when these changes are made within the city, when it comes to parks, proximity matters. And I think that, Jenkins Park is a perfect example of what could turn out to be a great project. But I think I would hope that council and Rec Advisory Committee would understand and appreciate that if they give the people, particularly in proximity to the park, an opportunity to share their vision of what they would want the park to be, they would ideas. Right now, that park has absolutely no shade. The only shade that's down there that's been there for about 50 years, some of the trees that are near at the end of Spring Street. There's no running, there's not a water faucet down there. The water faucet was disconnected 40 years ago. So I think that, you know, this master plan idea is great. It would give people in the community an idea, an opportunity to, you know, what they would, you know, happen. And frankly, I think that the current choice of putting the basketball court in that area is a result of simply not getting enough input from the community. I did meet with city engineer earlier today and showed some alternative locations to that site as far as the basketball court, which would allow the baseball field to be viable. And from a financial perspective, and actually there is a cost benefit to that decision, because any decision that's made to reconfigure the baseball field comes along with reconfiguring the infield. And the infield typically is one of the more expensive parts, because you have to have a certain kind of compaction and soil to maintain proper, you know, a proper field. So I think the cheapest thing to do, and I'll close with this, is that if you look at the current costs of what's been spent right now, I think they're about 20% into the project. It's about $20,000. If you had to move the current infill to another location, it would cost more than that than to create the new infield. So there's a cost savings just simply keeping the infill what it, you know, where it is. And you can hear that that's how close I am to the park. I just want to thank you guys for giving us an opportunity to share that. And we are, you know, we have a WPC, which is a West Side Park Committee, which is, you know, taking incoming suggestions regarding this park here. And I said last thing, the one thing I wanted everybody to know about this park is that park actually is an old neighborhood. My grandmother actually used to live on second base of that field. And there were many other families that all the way down Spring Street, all the way down Mechanic Street, all the way down High Street, although they're not here anymore, are still very much a part of the community. My father actually did the redevelopment for this particular area, and I remember him coming home with the blueprints for Jenkins Field, the tennis courts, basketball courts, and so I try not to be too close to what I'm saying, but I do think that it's more than a park to this community. It's unfortunate that there hasn't been the amount of activity that would justify just not even thinking about getting rid of the baseball field. But, you know, there's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of kids in our neighborhood that are, I mean, within rock throwing distance of the park that would absolutely, given the opportunity of some type of league, would absolutely participate. And I think hopefully the recreation department will reach out to some of the community leaders in this area, and they'll find very motivated people to you know, this field is beautiful. You ought to come down and look at it sometime. And it's a very well maintained. Millions of dollars went into this field to make it great, to grade it, to create it, you know, create what it is right now. And certainly it doesn't make sense to spend $100,000 on a basketball court to kind of nullify a park that costs certainly over $1 million. You can actually go back in the records. It was built in 72 or 3. So anyway, I just want to thank you for that. My suggestion is that they move the basketball court currently under construction to a site along Mechanic Street, parallel to where the existing basketball court is, save the city some money, and allow the baseball field to be functional. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Just a quick comment to you. We did talk about Jenkins Park at our last, we only meet every other month. So our last meeting was in March, and we did talk about Jenkins a little bit at that time. We were given some information about Jenkins. Actually, I played softball on that in the 70s in the Norwich Women's Softball League that we started there. Yeah. So I would like to invite you to our next regular meeting on the 16th of March at 6 o'clock. And it would probably fit better into there, so there could be more of a discussion
16
about
May?
16th of May.
Okay.
A Wednesday, we usually meet every other month, the third Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock.
Virtual meeting as well?
Yeah, we've been doing that so far, yeah.
That's
Hopefully
fine.
we're getting out of that, so,
That's fine. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate all the work that you guys do.
thank you. Do we have any other public comments? I can't see everybody, so someone's gonna have to tell me.
No, we don't have any other hands that are raised.
Thank you, Darrell. All right, then, is Sheila still on?
Yes,
Sheila
yes, I
Hassel?
am. Yep, I am.
Okay. I just wanted to, well, I'm gonna talk to the group, but I didn't realize public utility took over the police department maintenance, but I'm not exactly sure what that is, if it's just the maintenance of their facility, the station or something like that. But
Public Works.
And I'm gonna mention this to everybody, that my concern is the maintenance of the rec department. There's 25 sites in the city that they take care of, which is over 155 acres of property, play space. So it's a huge undertaking unto itself, you know, what the rec department does have to maintain. And I think it's comparable to the police department, you know, it's a bit different. But if that worked out for them, I'm not convinced that it's gonna work out in this case. So that's that. So since there's no other comment left,
The other
I
thing
just-
I want to put
Go
out there for you, Julie,
Sure.
is, you know, within the budget, I think overall, one of the ARP request or proposal pieces is to add an additional maintainer to that crew for I think it's either 18 months or 2 years. So they would have an additional person, whether it stayed in the rec or whether it went over to Public Works. That was one of the other pieces that was put out there for rec maintenance overall. So I think the bigger picture that the council has to look at, regardless of where it moves or whether it stays, moves, is the overall size of the crew down the road. I think that's the bigger question here. You know, we're not looking downsize them, but how do we make it work regardless of them staying with the recreation or moving to Public Works and getting the staff that they need. So I think that's the bigger question too.
okay. Okay. So at this time, I think that as a recap, I have the meeting with the city manager. If everybody, I will put that out, probably an evening would be best for everybody. I'll put it out to all the members of the board and see when we can meet. To talk about, you know, to talk about this movement of the maintainers out from, you know, I see as like severing the, you know, the head from the body in terms of being able to run the rec department, and that concerns me. So I would say I will call tomorrow to see when we can meet and get a few times out to everybody, and that would be our next step. I also want to tell everyone that there is a city, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, Darrell. There is a city council meeting this Monday for, and that's a budget meeting. Is that they're going to be talking about the budget at that time?
We will be, we won't be discussing, but the public can come in and make any comment they want about the city budget. So
So it's a public, what do you guys call it, public hearing?
public hearing. So Monday,
Okay,
there was a public hearing. The other thing that was announced last Monday night at the council meeting is there will be an additional public hearing on the 16th during the council meeting. So
May 16th?
May 16th as well. So it's a regular council meeting, but we are also adding time for people to come in and give comment on the budget as well. So it will be another budget public hearing on that night as well. And then I will say from my standpoint, I have told or requested that there be more community outreach. So I'll be looking out for some events in parks, firehouses, wherever houses, for more input for the community overall when it comes to the budget and the ARPA allocations.
Okay, so I would invite anyone having to go talk to the city council and the city managers at those, but hopefully we can get a meeting before, today's the 4th. We might not be able to get one before the 9th, but I will definitely try. If not, you said the 16th is also going to be a, where people can speak?
Yes. So there will be 2 sections, actually, people can speak on the 16th. We have a regular citizen general comment period, but there will
Yes.
also be a period for just budget related comment as well.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. All right, very good.
I will say it doesn't hesitate for you to speak on Monday. If we don't have a meeting before then, it's not a problem for you to speak on Monday.
Right,
Have the meeting and then also speak again.
okay. All right. Any other comments or questions for the good of the cause here? All
So
right,
as a member of the advisory board, I can make a comment at public comment.
Absolutely. You live in Norwich, so you
Yeah,
are absolutely can say whatever you want. Yes.
thank you.
anybody else on the board that for the good of the cause here before we adjourn? Well, thank you very much, Tara, for setting up the meeting, and thank you everybody for attending. Hopefully we'll get some answers and definitely speak out and let the council know how we as the rec advisory board is feeling about this movement. So at that point, I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second? No one wants to adjourn? Okay. All right, so we are adjourned at, I don't know who's keeping score, but it's 6:53. I always try to keep my meetings definitely under an hour, so. All right, thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.